Dear Indian friends, greetings from Bell'Italia 88 and welcome back. I am Caterina Brazzi Castracane, I am an historian and I am here in collaboration with the Italian Cultural Center in New Delhi. Today in particular I am here to share with you the second appointment of this month of November 2020, dedicated to the rediscovery of the Italian city of Venice. What we are going to talk about today with this second lecture is related to the myth of Venice. All that elements that during the past built the idea of Venice as a wondrous city. The starting point of this conference is related with the period of Renaissance, because that was the moment that, despite of its name that just means rebirth, as we had seen together during other conferences, was also a period remarked by dramatic events, including bloody wars, plagues, and economic instability. During that time, Venice was, despite of these, an important and wealthy republic. And this means that the government of the city had the economy to support art and artists. During the modern age, Venice decided to realize important artistical works to transform the city, and they did it in a sort of amazing and spectacular way. First of all, Renaissance in Venice means rebuilding, because you have to imagine that during that time Venice was really an important gateway between the East and the West. And this means that the city was able to generate a new kind of taste that was full of different kind of influence from different part of Europe. This new taste will be named the Venezian's Gothic, and is a sort of confluence of three different elements. First of all, the early Gothic style from the north, put together with Byzantine elements and also Arabian influences that had arrived to Venice from Spain. The best remarkable example of this new style is the Doge's Palace that you are seeing with these pictures, but actually all the Grand Canal was transformed during that time to be the perfect stage of this kind of new architectural examples. The palace should be, for that moment, the most important examples of power and richness of that republic. And this is the reason why still today this is the perfect postcard from the past, the icon of that period when the Serenissima was the queen of the sea. Actually, it's important also to remark that the architectural history of Venice is also characterized by the presence of Andrea Palladio, one of the master of the architecture of the Renaissance time, the man who designed the prototype of the new suburban villas that still today is named after him, the Villa Palladiana, and also the man who wrote one of the master of the architectural literature, the four book of architecture. Palladio in Venice realized two important examples of church. First of all, the basilica dedicated to San George the Major that is located on the small island that bears the same name. This basilica, designed first by Palladio but finished after Palladio's death by Vincenzo Scamozzi, is one of the most remarkable examples of the aim of the architecture during the first part of the Renaissance to create something modern with the taste of the past. And in this case, you can notice on the facade of this basilica the columns, the festoons, the statue, all different elements that the architects took from the past to realize a new kind of temple to celebrate the Christianity. The same point of view is visible just seeing this other design by Palladio, the church dedicated to Christ, il Redentore, a sort of important temple, and with this facade completely carved into white marble, the perfect material used by Romans to create and to celebrate their power with important buildings. This church, realized by the hand of Palladio and after him by Antonio da Ponte, is still today one of the most important place to talk about the history and the tradition of Venice, because it was erected to honor a vow made during a terrible plague in 1575, and still today this church is the perfect place to celebrate one of the most important feasts of Venice. This feast is celebrated since 1577 and was organized to celebrate the construction of this important Palladian's temple, but also to say thanks to for the hand of the plagues. Today the celebration are organized around three different moments: an important Holy Mass with the Bishop of Venice, then an important sort of procession that can be done via this important ponton bridge, and eventually the celebration of the feast with an important regatta with the traditional Venetian boat, the gondolas. After the architecture, Venice was also the theater of a new cultural revolution, a painting revolution, because Venice was the perfect stage when new generation of painters were able to transform the idea of art. This school that was born in Venice at the end of the 15th century is basically related, first of all, around the figures of the painter Jacopo Bellini. In this case, with this slide, you are seeing one of his masterpiece, one Holy Virgin with a baby, realized with the technique of watercolor on wood, and that a masterpiece that is housed inside the Galleria dell'Accademia, one of the most important museum of Venice. In this case, Bellini was the master who opened the street to transform art in something related with modernity, where the figures portrayed in that kind of paintings could be the perfect examples of the humanity of the paintings and also of the art. Two sons of Jacopo, Bellini, Gentile, and Giovanni could be considered the innovator of painting, and I choose to talk about them with this masterpiece housed inside the Pinacoteca di Brera in Milan, because it's a sort of a reinterpretation of what the Venetian painter were able to do during that period. You have to remember that Venice was an important gateway between, as I said, the East and the West. And this means that painters could use a different kind of suggestion to realize something new. First of all, they, in this case, the Bellini brothers, realized a sort of metaphysical representation of the city of Alexandria with a different kind of palace and tower that are not really true, but just the reinterpretation of something that they could have imagined from the different vision of other world, but also first presentation of a new kind of technique, the oil paintings that have arrived to Venice from the north. The real master of this time is Giovanni Bellini, that really could be considered the man who instructed the painters of that period that we will call the Art Renaissance in Venice. Actually, among his pupils, we have to remember Giorgione, Titian, and Sebastiano del Piombo, three masters of our history of art, and we can understand the revolutionary way that Bellini used to transform the art of his time, just seeing this is important Holy Virgin with the child that is completely different from the other signed by his father. In this case, you are seeing an important oil on wood, and you can notice that this new technique is still here remarked and more touchable, just seeing the important pigments and colors that completely transformed the vision of this painting. After him, the Venetian school was able to develop a particular style of painting, basically characterized around four different elements: depth, rich colors, emphasis on patterns and surface, and eventually a strong interest in the effects of light. This last point is the most remarkable to understand the Venetians painter, because in other part of Italy or in other part of the world, the paintings are not so remarked by the presence of different kind of light effect. And in this case, you can understand these elements just seeing the masterpiece of this slide that is one of the most enigmatical painting of our history, La Tempesta by Giorgione, another important artist related with the Venetian school. In this case, the atmosphere that you can feel is about something that is not completely possible to understand, with different kind of figures, maybe a mother with a child, another male character in front of us, and all the figures surrounded by different kind of architecture, nature, and also the important and central effect of the light of the moon inside the cloud and the sky, that here is something that is here just to let us understand that not everything is possible to explain with word. Giorgione is one of the master of the school, but is also the man that left the way to Titian to become the most important master of the Venetian painting during the last part of the 16th century. After the Giovanni Bellini's death, Titian became the most important painter of the Republic of Venice, and also the master that was both interested in religious and classical subjects. This means that he was also able to create important vision where the philosophical and psychological aspect of the characters could be seen as the most remarkable aspect. In this case, I choose for you an important masterpiece housed inside the Galleria dell'Accademia, a scene of Pietas, where it is important to notice three different characters around the body of Christ. First of all, the figures of the Virgin Mary with the body of Christ upon her, that is a sort of a citation of the important work by Michelangelo, or the figures of Mary Magdalene in front of us, that he is screaming her suffering for this death, but also the important man that is represented prostrate before the Virgin. According to the Holy Book, he should be Giuseppe d'Arimatea, but we know that this is the self-portrait of Titian, something that is so full of passion and feelings that impossible not to think that could be a sort of important testament by the master to the next generation, to the future. Titian left an important heredity in Venice. Two other masters of this first generation of painter of the Venetian school, Jacopo Tintoretto and Paolo Veronese. Two different kind of master completely influenced by Titian. Tintoretto is the master of a reinterpretation of the Renaissance think and point of view about art. He tried to put together the important colors that are so important to understand the Titian's masterpiece with the energy, the power, and all the life that is possible to see in Michelangelo's masterpiece. He realized an important and outstanding cycle of paintings for the Scuola di San Rocco, where these examples of paintings are still in their original location. In particular, in this slide, you can see this amazing annunciation with a lot of earth of angels that had the power to destroy the human building to arrive to give to the Virgin Mary the holy message. All these emotion related with the movement inside this kind of painting is the revolutionary starting point of the work by Tintoretto. Paolo Veronese, in other way, is another kind of master. He was able to create this important composition full of rich colors and different kind of figures. In this case, you are seeing an allegory of the music full of elements from the past that are here portrayed with elements related with the modernity. Look to the female figures of musicians, but also to the important marble statue that is in the higher part of these paintings. And I would like to use this masterpiece to introduce the third ambit of this cultural revolution that took place in Venice during the period of Renaissance. I'm talking about the music because it's important to remark that Venice during the 17th century became the real capital of this ambit. In particular, thanks to Claudio Monteverdi, that was the master of chapel in the Basilica di San Marco, and he also was a pioneer in the development of the opera. Monteverdi and other compositor and musician were during that time able to work in Venice, also because Venice had one of the most important charitable foundation related with music that we can know. I'm speaking about the traditional spedali that were created in Venice during the Renaissance time, that were just the sort of charitable foundation for young children and orphanage. The remarkable aspect is not related with being a charitable foundation, but with the idea that this kind of place were the place where the girls during their permanence inside them were trained in music. And this is the reason why during the next century the ospedali gradually developed into conservatories of music. By the early 18th century, the excellence of this place was unrivaled. In this case, you are seeing a representation of the Pio Ospedale della Pietà, one of the most important ospedale that was present in Venice during that time, also because it was the place where used to work one master of the music, Antonio Vivaldi. He used to work as musical director in this ospedale, but also he used to compose a large part of his work during that period, including the more important and example of composition by him, the Four Seasons that we are going to share together with this video. And with this wonderful music, we can enter into the Venice of the 18th centuries. That's a city that became the European capital of pleasure. You have to think and imagine that during that century, all the travelers of the Grand Tour used to discover a different kind of city all around Europe. And when they arrived to Venice, they discovered the really pleasure city full of theater, music, representation, celebration, feast. In particular, the carnival that during that time went on for 3 months every year and was the most remarkable moment when all the inhibition were hidden under a mask. The masks are among the most remarkable elements of the traditional life of Venice. They have a long history of protecting people's identity during different kind of promiscuous activities, and they were originally made from papier-mâché and decorated with different kind of gems or elements that could transform them into something new, something different from the ordinary. In particular, in Venice, we have got two different kind of masks. The first related with the Commedia dell'arte. They are based on the characters of this form of improvisational theater, and the most remarkable among them are Arlecchino and Colombina. The second category of mask is related with the really mask created for the carnival, and they are the symbol of transgression. Two are among the most important, Bauta and Moretta. In this case, with this picture, you are seeing the Moretta, the perfect cycle mask that help us just to cover the face, not to understand who is the human that is in front of us. That period with the important celebration of Carnival was also the period related with the last generation of painters related with the Venetian school. Canaletto, Tiepolo and Guardi are the most remarkable artists related with that time that was called also the time of the triumph of colors. This is the name of an exhibition of the last spring that that was realized in Vicenza to celebrate them. First of all, Canaletto, that he was also called the topographical painter, the man who started his career working with his father, that was a painter of stage sets, and this means that this kind of attention for the details will be for all his career peculiarity of the work of Canaletto. He was able to realize the important view of Venice. His drawings depict the most famous monuments of Venice, but also with him we can know lesser known corners of this city. His paintings and drawings were collected during the time by important members of the international aristocracy, including the King George III, and also their important important view became the first kind of postcards from Venice, because Canaletto was also able to create a lucrative market around his masterpiece, because all the, in particular, British grand tourists that arrived to Venice was so related with this city to choose to come back to home with this important view of the Venetian city. After this aspect, Canaletto is also remembered as the poem of the ordinary, with this important view of the San Marco Square. You can notice that he is also interested into the representation of the everyday life, something that could let us understand which were also the sounds of this moment, and that could help us to see a sort of representation of small figures in an important stage that is here represented by the square, with a lot of different details that are so related with a world full of small elements. Completely different from this one is the art by Giovan Battista Tiepolo, the man who transformed the idea of fresco, working in Venice for a different kind of commission. In particular, he is the last interpreter of the important Baroque paintings with important effect of lightness, elegance, and also elements related with tragical representation. He realized in Venice one of the most important palace completely decorated by him, Palazzo Labia, where Tiepolo should work to generate an important celebration of the power of this family, and he created with one master of the new technique called quadratura, Girolamo Mengozzi Colonna, an important elements of a new kind of painting where trompe-l'œil and different kind of representation were the most remarkable effect to play with another kind of celebration of the past in the direction of the future. The past was basically the starting point to celebrate the huge family, creating something new, something that could be similar to something that is impossible not to notice, but also impossible not to really understand if what you are seeing is true or not. The last interpreter of that period in Venice is Francesco Guardi, and it's important to notice that he is, after Canaletto, the main painter of you in Venice, but he also realized that a particular kind of paintings that are called capricci, that are a sort of fantastical representation of the ordinary. In In this case, with this masterpiece housed inside the National Gallery in London, we can see different kind of suggestion: the sky, the arch, the window, the architectural elements that surround this central scene with different kind of figures. Nobody is in front of us, and the same is possible to remark just seeing another masterpiece of the National Gallery, where the idea of reinventing the art using elements from the past, the arch, but in this case the destroyed arch with nature, and also people around this strange situation between the sea. You can see the both in this part of the representation, but also the sort of country side is something that is not possible to understand at all, but that help us just to feel the normality of a representation that should be the perfect example of a fantastical world with one part that is related with reality and one part related with an important dream. All that past were able to build another kind of Venice, the contemporary one, the city that became at the end of the 19th century the temple of culture. We can find a starting point for the history of this contemporary Venice related with the Biennale. The Biennale is the most important international art exhibition that was organized in Venice before thinking to realize an important exhibition related only with the Italian art, and then transformed in 1895 with the presence, as you can see with this picture of King Umberto and his wife, the Queen Margherita, into an important international art exhibition. During that year, the first international art exhibition of Venice became immediately the most remarkable event of that year, with about 2,100 visitors that arrived to Venice just to admire the latest artworks. The celebration was called Biennale because it was set up as a biannual event, and during the next year the Biennale that was also transformed in an important organ of research and promotion of art, was divided in different and specific departments: art, architecture, music, cinema, dance and theater. Since that time the Biennale was organized first of all inside the public garden of Castello, then in the Arsenale, one of the most remarkable places of Venice, and the first building that was realized to celebrate this exposition was a building dedicated to the exposition called Pro Arte. This building was realized realized by two important an architect and artist, Enrico Travisanato and the artist Marius De Maria, and was realized to be the heart of this new interpretation of exhibition. After art, the first extension of this original activity was music. In 1930 took place in Venice the first international festival of contemporary music with important composer including Stravinsky, that you can see with this picture just sitting in a gondola in Venice during that year. After music, cinema is maybe one of the most important and elements related with the history of Venice, because the Venice International Film Festival is the old film festival in the world, because it was organized for the first time in 1932 and is a sort of important celebration of this art, and it became an annual event from 1935. This is the reason why this year we had celebrated the 70 edition, a sort of important celebration of this art with actors and director that used to stand on this important red carpet at Lido of Venezia. This here is important to remember that three women are among the winners, two director and one important actress, Tilda Swinton. But to arriving to hand these appointments is important also to notice that Venice was and maybe is a perfect city transformed by women. In particular, in this case, with this amazing picture, you are seeing one of the most important women of our history, a woman who transformed the history of Venice, but also the history, the art history of the world. She is Peggy Guggenheim, the girl that was born in New York at the end of the 19th century, that traveled all around Europe trying to open art gallery in Paris, in London, with the help of two important figures, among the others, Samuel Beckett and Marcel Duchamp, a woman who arrived definitely in Venice in 1948 to expose her important collection at the Biennale, and then decided to live there. During the next year, in 1949, she acquired a fantastic and finished mid-18th century building called Palazzo Venier dei Leoni, that is an important palace on Grand Canal without the facade that we had seen together before, and she decided to transform that place into a sort of house museum. During the same year, she organized inside her garden the first free exhibition of contemporary sculpture, as you can see with this picture, and that was the starting point of an extraordinary career. Thanks to her, we have Jackson Pollock, that was just an artisan who used to work for her uncle, and that will be one of the most important genius of the contemporary art. She was the woman who decided to organize the first European exhibition of its work in Venice in 1950. But also, thanks to her, we have got one of the most important art collection of the world. The Guggenheim collection in Venice is one of the most extraordinary collection of art, including important names of the contemporary art. Magritte, in this case with the Empire of Light, one of the masterpieces of our art history, but also the genius of Kandinsky, and with him Malevich, but also Giacomo Balla and other Italian interpreter of that transformation that took place during the 20th century. This place is a sort of never-ending temple, even because Peggy Guggenheim, that since 1962 was an honorary citizen of Venice, died there, and also her ashes are placed with her dogs in a corner of the garden of this museum. Still today, if you are going to visit this museum, you can discover the history of a man who decided for her life to buy a painting a day and also to live with her dogs into a sort of art temple where everything was possible, and this is, I think, one of the most remarkable elements that we can notice about Venice. Thank you very much to everybody for your attention, and we will see the next month for other lecture. Bye bye, enjoy.